First video back after my long-awaited break over, well, unexpected break, I guess. We've got a new fan favorite in the game in the form of the Toyota GT1 from 1990, whatever. I've put in this retro Minolta livery, obviously, because Minolta Toyota, best car ever made. This livery looks quite nice. I will put the person on screen on who made it. This is a 800 pp Sardegna build, if you couldn't tell by the title. Similar to the one that I made with the R92CP Pornhub Special, which is on the John Player Special and not the Martini livery. But I digress. Fan favorite car here. This is actually somewhat drivable using the manipulation of the downforce and the suspension. I've got it dialed in to an extent to where it's somewhat engaging, whereas Pornhub Special is not actually particularly engaging. You can smash out low 130s without even thinking. This one requires a little bit of thinking because it does tend to kick the tail out a little bit. But I'll show you the setup anyway. So you may have seen Nathan Tate's setup with where he has max power and the manual transmission. I've decided not to do that. Add a bit more ballast and put the racing transmission in. So 799.81 is what we've got here on the racing hards, which you'll need to buy. Fully customizable suspension at 40 at the front, which is the lowest, 90 at the back. Anti-roll bar 3 on the front, 8 on the back. Damping ratio 30, compression on 30 at the front, 35 at the back. Expansion 40 on the front and 40 at the back. Natural frequency 3.9 and 5. Negative camber on 2.5 and 3. Toe angle, toe out 0.15 and toe in 0.1. So this setup is somewhat counterintuitive because obviously if you wanted the min-max downforce original setup of the R92CP, you'd want the front to be as soft as possible and the rear to be as stiff. But this still tends to oversteer even with a balanced setup, so you can somewhat make it slightly more balanced in a way which allows it to be somewhat drivable, because remember, this is a Group 2 car and not a Group 1 car, which is I thought it was going to be a Group 1 car. It has very similar spec stock to a Group 1 car, but it isn't. So we'll go on to the diff. I've put it on 10, 5 and 5. I find it tends to oversteer a lot on corner exit, so I've brought up the initial torque so it wheel spins less out of corners. It does tend to wear the rear tires out quite a bit, so you need to drive this cautiously, but I'll explain when we're on the track. Downforce is on 500 at the front, which is the lowest, 900 at the back, which is the highest. I think the lowest you can go on the front with a Group 1 is 500, and the rear was like 1800 or something, so this has got a lot less downforce than you'd imagine. Fully customizable ECU, that comes stock. Ballast 76 kilos to minus 50. This bit brings it slightly front biased, which does look weird on paper, but it's the only way to bring it down to 800 performance points. So I've made the front, I guess that means making the front slightly stiffer is better because there's more weight across the front, whereas the R92CP was 45-55 weight distribution. This is 53-47. But anyway, I digress. Power restrictor, nothing there. Fully customizable racing transmission, auto set to 340. You might want to make these gears slightly longer, maybe bring it up to like 360, but I'll keep it for 340. It has anti-lag pre-installed. I put it on weak just to save a bit of fuel, and so that it doesn't kick in so much on corner exit. Otherwise, I found that it would spin out quite a bit on corner exit, even if you had anti-lag on strong, just because it was bringing on the power too early, rather than it being progressive. Brake balance controller I've got on 0, and there's no other parts installed. So I'll show you where Sardegna is if you don't know. World circuits, you want to go to Europe eventually. There we go. You want to go to the bottom here, Sardegna road track, and you want to go to World Touring Car 800 Sardegna 485,000 15 laps. So obviously you couldn't only use hards on this one. I will explain how I drive it based on this setup, and I'll explain a little bit as I get to first place what you want to do in this case. So all the way to fuel mix, go to 3, and I'm shifting halfway up the shift light just to save a little bit of extra fuel. Try and brake in a straight line because this doesn't really like trail braking. Let the tyres warm up, otherwise you'll be spinning out like that. So this is quite a fun car to drive, I do like it. They finally made it like premium interior, premium car. I do like the way it drives. It is pretty engaging, but once you get used to it, it's a pretty easy car to drive. So if you're saving as much fuel as I am, you should be able to pit end of lap 8 and fill the car to the brim and finish the race on fuel mix 3, potentially bringing it down to fuel mix 2 if needed. With my setups, I don't really like changing the fuel mix too much mid-race. I like to just stick to one setup and call it a day, one setting and call it a day. Because you don't really want to be mixing fuel mix 3, fuel mix 1, fuel mix 2 for this bit, fuel mix 4 for this bit. I don't like that. That's a bit annoying in a sense. So yeah, that's why I tend to stick it on 3 and call it a day. So some setup advice, I guess you'd want to say. If you find it's oversteering too much, you'd probably want to bring the rear suspension, make the rear suspension slightly softer, and you'd want to bring up the initial torque a bit more on the diff. That way there's less wheel spin out of corners and it'll be slightly more balanced. The ride height you'd want to keep how it is, because it will at least let the rear squat without it effectively bottoming out the shock, and then you'll at least have more travel in the suspension and less in the tire, because that's what happens when you spin out. You effectively have too stiff of a rear suspension, and then all that pressure is going through the tire, and then the tire gives way a lot easier, because you can't really adjust tire pressures on this game, can you? It's all really dependent on temperature and how quickly the tires warm up. But I think the tires have warmed up pretty quickly right now. We're in 5th place. Oh yes, and the other reason why I chose the manual, the racing transmission over the manual one, is because that slight delay in the gear change to obviously simulate a manual transmission is enough to unsettle the car mid-corner, and it grips up when there's obviously ignition cut in a way. Well, not ignition cut, the engine and gearbox are not connected because you've effectively pressed the clutch, and it hooks up, and then you're effectively clutch kicking it, and in that way it unsettles the car mid-corner and you spin out. Whereas if you have a sequential gearbox like this, you don't have that problem, and it makes the car a lot easier to drive. Is there anything else I need to mention about the car? Oh yes, tire wear. Some of you may be aware of the strategy on changing upper gear mid-corner if this car starts to spin the rear tires. If you're changing upper gear just to give your car extra grip, that is a very useful strategy with this car. The problem is obviously when your rear tires wear out, you'll be changing up gears and then your wheels will spin more, and then your rear tires will wear out quicker. So what you kind of want to do is you want to modulate your throttle more as your tires wear out, Now it's fine, you can shift up to like 4th gear in the 2nd gear corner just to hook up, because this has a lot of torque down low. And you've got the anti-lag on, so that helps with power delivery as well. So we're just approaching 40 here now. Best laps I've got so far are 135s, 134, 135, around that. I reckon with a more competent driver, this will get into the 33s or 32s pretty easily. In fact, I think with a competent driver, this should be on pace with all the Group 1 setups for this track. But obviously, I'm not a competent driver. But I do think I do think I know somewhat my way around a good setup. So yeah, that's about it. We're in 1st place. I'm going to finish this race off the air. I hope you enjoyed my 1st video back. This has been more of a discussion than an actual professional video, but I kind of prefer these sort of things where I just record something, one take. Makes it feel a bit more natural, you know. If you've got any other setups and helpful hints for this car, helpful hints for this car and advice and tuning advice, let us know in the comments, because a lot of people like to say mine's better without saying why it's better. I'm the one who has the balls to put the setup on YouTube and be humiliated for how bad it is to some people, so I'm prepared for that. But it seems like the R92 video did good enough, so I have a feeling this video will do quite well. Yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned. I'm definitely going to be back to a normal Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule, and I've got a little new series that's going to be popping up. It involves quite a bit of editing on my behalf, but I'm looking forward to posting it. Every Friday is going to be a video on this series. Pretty much until I catch up with the updates. So I will see you then. Take care and have a good rest of the day.